On this program, an excursion to the desert. We will point our camera at the scenery, the plants, and the animals of the Sonoran Desert. The Sahara, with its oases, sand dunes, and tuaregs, fascinates adventurous minds. The Sonoran Desert, with its canyons, 100-year-old cacti, and yaqui sorcerers, is just as intriguing. A vast, dreary, barren expanse of land, scorched by a burning sun. There is a kernel of truth in that mythical image. But it doesn't tell the whole truth, for some desert regions can be astonishingly lush. The common denominator of all deserts is aridity. Deserts rarely receive more than 25 centimeters of rainfall annually. Various factors account for this scantiness and variability of precipitation. First, deserts are located at latitudes scoured by extremely dry winds. Indeed, the ocean currents from the Arctic regions are glacial and cool the winds that sweep the western coasts of these latitudes. The colder a wind is, the less moisture it can retain. It is cool, dry winds like these that sweep into North Africa, for example, and maintain the world's largest desert, the Sahara. Also, some deserts form in the middle of continents, far from the major sources of water, oceans. One such example is the Gobi Desert, which is located deep in the heart of the Asian continent. Mountains are another effective barrier against the propagation of moisture. Moist winds off the Pacific, for instance, hit the Rocky Mountains as they enter the continent. As they rise to pass over the mountain range, they cool. The moisture contained in these winds condenses and is released over the western slopes of the range in the form of rain or snow. The air which reaches the other side of the mountains, drained of water, dries out the valley, contributing to the existence of the American deserts, including the Sonoran Desert. Besides dryness, deserts share another characteristic, and that is intense heat. The presence of water particles suspended in the air normally creates an insulating shield which filters the sun's rays. In desert regions, however, the degree of humidity is too low to diminish the intensity of solar radiation. In summer, air temperatures can go up to 45 degrees centigrade, and ground temperatures sometimes exceed 70 degrees. In addition, the lack of a moisture screen causes the heat stored up during the day to dissipate quickly once the sun has set. After a torrid summer day, the temperature can drop more than 10 degrees at nightfall. Also, winter and summer seasons can vary widely in deserts. For example, in winter, the Sonoran Desert, which spans either side of the western border between the United States and Mexico, generally receives small amounts of rain or even snow. This precipitation replenishes the groundwaters. Then, during the spring, as the days lengthen and the nights become milder, drought gradually reappears. Around midsummer, large clouds formed by the coming together of warm air from the plain and cool air from the mountains hang in the sky. These clouds usually burst into violent thunderstorms. However, fall may come with very little water having actually fallen to moisten the thirsty soil. The Sonoran Desert presents a unique topography. It is a large, low area bordered by mountain ranges. This topography, combined with the effects of the climate in the region, produces many contrasting habitats, ranging from hot, dry plain to cool, moist mountains. Each of these contrasting habitats is home to a different plant and animal community. On the other hand, the same type of climate can create a completely different landscape depending on the geological formations it affects. The Painted Desert in northeastern Arizona, for example, is a maze of barren hills. Vegetation is virtually non-existent in the Painted Desert. The hills of the Painted Desert are formed from very brittle sedimentary rocks, rich in bentonite, a clay of volcanic origin. When wet, bentonite causes landslides which uproot everything in their way. It therefore prevents plant life from taking root. Only a few shrubs and herbaceous plants somehow manage to survive. Despite the lack of vegetation, the Painted Desert remains a spectacular natural setting. Its many cone-shaped hills exhibit a striking range of pastel colors. This rainbow of colors is due to various combinations of minerals in the rocks. Chief among these are iron oxides and manganese, providing tones ranging from orange-red to purple. The blacks and grays come from decayed plant and animal matter. The white streaks usually contain gypsum, a salt as white as snow. In one form or another, deserts cover 14% of the Earth's land surface.
The Eastern Sahara is one of the driest, most desolate regions in the world. In that desert, the annual energy of the sun could evaporate 200 times more water than the annual rainfall. The Sonoran Desert is not quite so arid. You might even say that it is lush, for it shelters over 2,500 species of plants.
The abundance and diversity of plant life that manages to flourish in such a desolate place as a desert are astonishing. Actually, these plants have developed various survival techniques to cope with the harsh desert climate. Some overcome unfavorable conditions simply by avoiding them. These are the annuals, plants such as the poppy, whose seeds remain dormant until the conditions are suitable for them to germinate. The seeds of some annuals may lie dormant for several years. But as soon as the growing conditions are suitable, little shoots sprout from the soil. Other plants, such as the ocotillo, drop their leaves when the soil dries out. After a shower, however, a multitude of tiny green leaves appear on the ocotillo's long, spiny branches. Depending on the frequency of rain, the ocotillo can go through several leafing cycles in a year. Like the ocotillo, the palo verde is covered in little green leaves, which fall off in times of drought. But even when leafless, due to the chlorophyll in its green bark, the palo verde continues to carry out the process of photosynthesis. Succulents, such as the agave, derive their name from their thick, spongy, water-storing tissue. That tissue, called aquifer parenchyma, is able to store vast quantities of water. The outer surface of these plants is covered in a waxy substance that reduces evaporation of the precious liquid. Succulents collect whatever moisture is available in the soil through an extensive superficial root system. Cactus plants store water in their stems and branches rather than in their leaves. Indeed, cacti have no real leaves, but rather pulpy stems covered in spines. This spiny armada will usually deter a thirsty animal. Indigenous to the Americas, cactus encompasses nearly 1,000 species of many diverse shapes. The barrel cactus, for example, has no arms and grows in width rather than in height. Conversely, the chain fruit cholla is a tree-shaped cactus whose arms end in long, dangling chains covered in golden barbed spines. The spiny segments break off easily and will stick to anything that touches them. The cholla's detached joints will take root wherever they fall and will grow new plants. The teddy bear cactus, a close relative of the cholla, reproduces the same way. The prickly pear cactus is thus named because its flattened branches are in the shape of a pear. By far the most stately and dominant cactus in the Sonoran Desert is the saguaro. A mature saguaro stands between 10 and 15 meters tall. With its many arms stretched skyward, it looks like a mammoth candelabra. Among the tens of million seeds a saguaro may produce during its lifetime, chances are only one will survive to become a mature plant. The ones that survive usually begin to grow under the protective shade of a tree like the palo verde. Saguaros grow very slowly. They don't produce flowers or fruit until they're about 50 years old. At age 75, their first arms begin to appear. Saguaros have a lifespan of 150 to 200 years. The fleshy trunk of the saguaro is covered in grooves. This accordion-like pleating is less apparent when the plant expands during wet times. It deepens when it contracts during periods of drought. When filled with water, a mature saguaro can weigh up to 8 tons. To help support the massive weight, the plant has an interior circular column of wood ribs that run up its stem. Thanks to its water storage capacity, the saguaro can survive more than 2 years without rain. It achieves this by keeping its stomates closed during the day. Stomates are tiny pores on the stem of the plant, through which photosynthetic gas exchange takes place. The saguaro thus opens its stomates during the night to take in carbon dioxide. The photosynthetic reaction only takes place the following day, when the necessary solar energy is available. The plant then waits until the cool nightfall to release the oxygen produced during the reaction. Desert plants have evolved numerous ingenious ways of surviving in an environment which we humans have a great deal more trouble adapting to.
Botanists believe that the mesquite, a desert legume tree, may have a future as a food crop. Its pods are indeed easy to gather and produce a flower of excellent quality. One day we may cultivate the desert. For the time being, though, the desert vegetation is the forage of dozens of animal species.
A great stillness seemingly prevails under the desert's blazing sun. Indeed, the creatures that inhabit the desert are elusive and discreet, and make only brief appearances. In a desert, one does not strut about, for the sun can be treacherous. Hunting is done at night, or at dusk and dawn, when temperatures are cooler. Reptiles are probably the best equipped for desert living. Their scale or plate-covered skins provide adequate protection against desiccation. The land turtle, for instance, benefits from the excellent insulation provided by its shell. That shell is also an effective protective shield against attacks by predators. The desert turtle can drink enormous quantities of water when it becomes available, increasing its weight by as much as 30%. The water is scarce. It draws what it needs from the plants it feeds on. It stores the water in its bladder. The most common desert reptiles are lizards. Like all reptiles, lizards are cold-blooded animals. They have to continuously move in and out of the sun to maintain a constant body temperature. Most lizards are not venomous. The Gila monster is an exception. With its brightly colored scales, the Gila monster bites and latches onto its victim and grinds its jaws so its venom, mixed with saliva, enters the wound. The Gila monster is not really to be feared because it is of a slow and timid nature. The use of venom is one of the most effective predation techniques. The great masters of this technique are vipers. These snakes have highly mobile jaws that enable them to swallow prey often larger than they are. A pair of long, pointed fangs protrude from their upper jaw. The venom secreted by a gland behind the reptile's eyes flows through the hollow fangs and is injected into the prey. Venom is a violent poison. Upon entering the victim's bloodstream, its neurotoxic substances make their way to the respiratory centers and paralyze them. Some vipers, like the rattlesnake, have an organ that allows them to detect the presence of prey. They have a deep pit on either side of their nostrils. A heat-sensing membrane covers the wall of these pits. Heat released by the prey in the form of infrared radiation passes through the small opening and reaches the membrane. The membrane is able to detect variations within a fraction of a degree and up to a distance of 30 centimeters. The snake is thus able to sense the size of its prey as well as its movements. When threatened or startled, an involuntary nervous reflex causes the rattlesnake to vibrate the end of its tail. The rattlesnake's tail ends in a series of dried, hollow segments of skin. When the rattlesnake shakes its tail, the loosely attached segments strike each other. This produces the characteristic rattling or buzzing sound for which the rattlesnake is named. Unlike reptiles, warm-blooded animals such as mammals need water to maintain their body temperature. The kangaroo rat is the epitome of the desert-adapted animal. Its digestive and urinary systems allow it to survive by drawing the water it needs solely from its food. Birds. Numerous birds, native and non-native alike, inhabit the desert. The Gila woodpecker, for instance, makes its nest in saguaro cactus, which provides a comfortable home that is cool in daytime and warm at night. The cactus wren is the state bird of Arizona. As its name suggests, it usually builds its nest in the spiny arms of the cholla cactus. Buoyed by the warm air columns rising off the desert, The red-tailed hawk soars over the American Southwest, surveying the land below for food. Birds and small rodents are its major prey. The roadrunner, the bird the cartoons have made so familiar to us, seldom flies, preferring to run instead. Fleet of foot, this desert cuckoo is capable of attaining speeds of 25 kilometers per hour. It can thus easily pick off insects and lizards. All things considered, the world's hottest and most arid places are not as deserted as we think.
Well, I hope the many wonders of the Sonoran Desert will have made you more aware of the urgency in protecting the environment.